everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are back with Ace of the Diamond, Act 2, episodes 4 through 6. It's the weirdest feeling because we're finally at the quarterfinals. We spent all of Season 2 getting to Nationals, getting to the chance to go to Nationals, and we're finally here. We're in the quarterfinals. We're down to the last 2 innings, and honestly, I'm expecting this game to end and us to be done with Nationals, and I'm okay with it because I really want to meet the first years and get them onto the team and see how these dynamics have formed. They've been teasing us with these new first years, and I'm like, well, we've got 2 more innings left, and so Sato is down by 2. Furuya's been pitching the whole game, and a part of me wants Furuya to pitch the rest of this game. 1, because it would allow him to pitch a full game like Sawamura has. 2, it would be a very interesting contrast to where we had Sawamura pitching a full 9 innings and winning that game, and if we lose the game, Furuya would pitch 9 innings, and it would be interesting to see where that takes Furuya's character. Now, you can make the argument that Sawamura's game that they won where he pitched 9 innings was not a national quarterfinal game, so it was a very different team, very different game. You can make that argument. I would not disagree with you. But I want Furuya to go through more growth, like our boy Sawamura, and I just want to see the first year dynamics as they come onto this team. So it's the oddest feeling. We spent an entire 51 episodes getting up to this point from the last set, and now I'm already ready for us to go back to year 2 starting, and because I know they're not going to win Nationals. That's the thing. The one thing about sports anime is you can kind of predict what's going to happen in the sense that they're not going to win Nationals yet. That's not where we're building up to. I predict that when this, and I know this manga is still ongoing for this series, but I just imagine the final match is going to be Inashiro versus Sato with like Mei at the top of his game, or maybe not the final match, but like the big match is going to be Mei versus Sato, Inashiro versus Sato, and that's going to be like the big rematch. And we're not there yet. Like last episode, Mei was like, okay, Miyuki, you've made it to Nationals. Now come back a stronger team so you can face us again. You know, so I don't think they're going to win this game because I don't think they're going to go on any further. I think they're going to make it to quarterfinals, and then the big thing is going to be, okay, and plus Masamune's team, Kamadai, is the team that beat Inashiro. So it seems poetic that you would have both Sato and Inashiro lose to the same team at Nationals, putting them on equal footing. So when they go back to face each other in the rematch, it's literally like 2 teams at equal levels facing each other. Right? So that seems to be what they're setting up. So I don't think they're going to win this game. But the question is Furuya going to pitch all 9 innings? I think he will because they're trying to build him up as an ace, and this game has given him press and given him some reputation. And I just feel bad for Sawamura. I know Kelsey in the comments on Patreon was like, it's okay. I'm like, I was having severe Taurus empathy last episode, as she calls it, and I definitely feel for Sawamura. I feel for our boy. And this series, it likes to put Sawamura through the ringer, and it's just, you root for our Sunshine Boy so much, and when you see him having a down moment, you're like, no, you just want to pick him up and hug him and be like, it's going to be okay. But at this point, it's like, how can he be the ace? Because Furuya's going through all this growth and development as a character, and it seems like he's strengthening himself as an ace. I'm like, how is Sawamura going to overcome that? And I guess that's what the season's about, right? I guess that's what the season is going to be about, is what can Sawamura do? And so I'm excited for that, and I'm excited to see these first year dynamics, but we've got to get through this game first. Now, I want to make a note before we start that on the Discord through Patreon, Blackwing, thank you. Blackwing noted last night, they were like, you should watch episodes 13 through 16 together, because I have it slated to do 3 episode slots, which would mean when I get to it, I would do 13, 14, and 15. And he was like, you should probably add 16 to that. I was like, oh! Basically, I know nothing about it. All I know is that there is apparently a cliffhanger between 15 and 16. And they were like, you really need to watch 15 and 16 together. And I'm like, okay. So that's all I know. That's all I want to know. I don't want to know anything else. Going in blind. But I am planning on, when I get to episode 13, watching 13, 14, 15, and 16 together. So if you make a comment, so if you're thinking about that, those of you that have seen this season already, just know I am planning to do that. And then when I get to episode 29, the only other thing I know about this season is episode 29 is a recap episode. And so I'll probably watch an extra episode that week to have the 3 episodes, and I'll skip episode 29. Or I'll just watch it off screen and talk to you all about it before we start. Because I don't like reacting to recap episodes. they're kind of like filler to me. I'm like, it's kind of a waste of time because we've already seen everything that's happened. So why do we need to recap? But yeah, so I am excited. I'm ready. I'm ready to see where this goes, but we're not going to waste any more time. I've talked for 5 minutes already. So let's dive in to episode 4, 5, and 6 and just see what happens. I may be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? But we're going to start this episode here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Holy cow. What? Oh, I love this. I think one of the best things about Ace of the Diamond is that there's such a huge ensemble cast of characters. And this series, a lot of people say it's a slow burn, and it is. The first season, I would argue the first season sets everything up. And if you have no clue, like I was going into baseball, where you know nothing about baseball, and you're like, what are the rules? How does this work? The first season takes its time to make sure you get everything, to set up the importance of positions, to set up the importance of these characters and their dynamics. And then the second season has expanded upon it so much, but already we're like 6 episodes in, and there's so much new stuff coming out. And what I love about the series is that there's so many new characters now. I'm like, there's so many possibilities with their interactions, with their dynamics. Some things in this episode, I'm like looking back on my thoughts from the first 3 episodes and thinking, I was wrong on so many accounts. And I'm seeing so much potential with these new first years that it's amazing. I'm like, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. So, man, episode 4, I have most of my notes are on 5 and 6, but episode 4, the whole idea of the day it began, this show, get me crying already. Why am I surprised? But Hongo versus Furuya, Masamune versus Furuya, and Aso, and then Masamune, God, he's so opposite of Furuya in a lot of ways. Everybody was comparing these 2 demon pitchers, but I'm like, they're really not the same. They're really not. Masamune and Furuya are so different. And I think it's really the whole praise thing. It's like Masamune, he's a funny character because he wants to get praised. You can tell he gets so pissed off because the coach has consistently been like, you're garbage, and making him mad. And then in one game he's praising Furuya, and Masamune is like, I've been playing with you for a year now, and I'm getting none of this. And we've been in one game and you're praising this pitcher who's from the same area as me, and we're very similar in terms of pitching styles. Oh, that just him getting worked up over the praise. And Furuya and him react differently, like to the outside praise. It's clear that Furuya accepts any praise. Furuya's like, yes, praise me. Like he gets all built up by it. And Masamune ignores everybody else's praise. He just wants the coach's praise. And that's the one thing he's not getting. He's getting praised by everyone else in the world except the one person he respects. Masamune respects his coach so much, the demon of a man who sold his soul to baseball. He respects him so much, Nita, and Nita won't praise him. And it's not because Nita honestly doesn't think he's deserving of it. Nita knows he's deserving of it. But Nita is deliberately holding back that praise to make Masamune better. And we've talked about it in the comments in the Discord. It's the weirdest coaching style. I'm not a fan of it, but it's effective. You can't deny that it's effective with Masamune. But these are teenage kids, so I'm like, it's questionable, but I think it's very funny how Masamune and Furuya both handle praise differently. And Furuya, I don't think has, like, the one person he looks up to are polar bears. Furuya's so simple. And Furuya doesn't have anybody that he really respects, that he idolizes. Furuya's like, I just want to play baseball. Like, Furuya's kind of simple. He's kind of an idiot. He's an idiot for baseball. That's all he wants to do, is hibernate and then until it's time to play baseball. And then Masamune is a bit more complicated in what he wants. And he just wants Nita's respect. And the sad thing is he already has it, but Nita's not going to acknowledge it. And that's God, it's interesting. And so this first episode, I'm so glad that Sawamura got out of his funk after this, because episode 4, I mean, the first 3 episodes were hard watching with Sawamura, but this episode broke me down. I was like, I felt so badly for Sawamura, because Sawamura, he's not petty. Sawamura is the opposite of petty. He keeps encouraging his team. He keeps encouraging Furuya, but you can just tell it's eating him alive that he's not able to play. And I like that they show us, because nobody seems to notice. I'm like, do y'all not get that Sawamura is extremely bummed out? And finally, they show that Kanemaru and Miyuki, they know. They know it's eating Sawamura alive, that he can't be out there pitching. Kanemaru, because he's had so much time with Sawamura the last season, and Miyuki, obviously, like, they know. They get it. And they're just like, ugh. And it's just so sad. I was very interested in Koshu and Yui's reaction to Furuya. That both of them were like, And I was wrong. I thought that Koshu was going to be the one to, like, get all up with Furuya. It's going to be Yui, which is, the prodigies are going to be together, which is, we're going to talk about that. But it hit me when they said that Yui is a prodigy. I'm like, oh, and he's rooming with Furuya. He's working with Furuya. I'm like, I see how this is. The battery with Yui and Furuya is going to be very interesting, because I think that's what they're setting up, that Yui is going to be this battery with Furuya, and they're both the prodigies, right? Oh, it's interesting. Oh, and then Koshu. I think Koshu is going to work with Sawamura. So, we're gonna talk about that when we get to episode 5. But yeah, and then Mei. We don't see Mei's reaction at all. He shows up. We don't see, with the other Inashiro players, we don't see his reaction. He's just at the very end there. It's like an ocean watching over him. And I feel Mei is jealous of Furuya just like Sawamura is. But I think it's for different reasons. I feel like Sawamura is jealous because he's not getting to play on the mound. He's not getting to help out his team. And he's worked so hard. Sawamura's worked so hard, and he's not getting the chance to showcase it, right? Because he messed up at that first game, that he's gotten punished for messing up. And it's eating him alive. Mei, I think, is jealous because he's like, oh, Mei sees a lot of how he was as a first year when Mei was up and coming, and everybody was focusing on Mei as the pretty boy pitcher, and everybody's like, oh my god, look at Mei, he's such a prodigy, he's so great. And now that attention is turned on to Furuya, and Mei's like, I want the attention to come back to me, damn it. Don't forget who I am. Are they going to say Furuya and Hongo are the best pitchers in Japan? No. And so I feel like that's Mei's reaction towards it. I could be wrong. I feel like next episode we're going to get some insight into Mei's mindset going into this game against Yakushi. And Mei, of course, is super pissed because it's Raichi. He got so mad at Raichi during their game against Kosei's team, against Ichidai, that he was like, oh, you disrespected the role of the pitcher and like all that jazz. So, very interesting. But they end up losing. Like I thought they ended up letting Furuya pitch the entire series. There's like, no, Furuya's had which I don't blame them. Furuya's had such a great game that they weren't going to dog him for losing the game by letting those first few runs down. Again, I feel like if it was Nori or Sawamura, they would have gave them hell. But because Furuya had such a great game, they're like, but they don't let him play in the next couple games because they're going to let him like sit it out. But yeah, and Harichi's bat broke, it looked like, during the game. And then I like that they make the comment that the two teams, that Kamadai and Sato, both up until their quarterfinal game against one another, they had relied on the relay to get them to that point. And then it was a battle of the aces. And Hongo was just better. Hongo was just the better at not letting any runs get by. That's basically how it went. And I also think I was very sad when Masamune deliberately, he did not shake Furuya's hand. Furuya was trying to be polite and just being like, oh, hey, good game. And Masamune was like, piss on you, and like walked off. Again, I can't hate Furuya because Furuya's so oblivious to how other people view him. Furuya has no clue. Furuya's like, why won't you shake my hand? We just played a game. What? He has no clue about the rivalry that Hongo has developed between him and Furuya. Furuya's like, I don't get it. And the fangirls, he's oblivious to. Everyone else's praise, he acknowledges it. And he's like, oh, thanks. But he's so oblivious. Furuya's like, I just want to play baseball. So I can't get mad at him, but I was sad that Masamune did not shake his hand. And then you have the opposite, where Sawamura is masking his sadness by congratulating everyone overly congratulating. But then that whole thing about the dirt, I'm so glad that this series did what it did at the end of this episode, because I'll be honest, when they were talking about grabbing the dirt from Koshin, and Miyuki's like, well, we don't want to grab the dirt from the field now. This is only the spring tournament. It's kind of like if you grab it now, it makes it feel like you're not coming back, right? Like you're grabbing it to remember, like you're not going to be back here in the summer. So he's like, we don't want to jinx ourselves, right? And when Sawamura was looking at it, what I was afraid of was that Sawamura was thinking, I thought that for a second Sawamura was going to be defeated. That he was going to be like, I'm never going to, he's like, it's over. The title of it was The Day It Began. And for a split second, I thought, oh, this is Sawamura. He's going to be depressed and think that he's never going to pitch again. He's just going to stand out and sit on the bench. He's going to give up. I was like, he's going to give up. He doesn't think he can do what Furuya's going to do. He's going to let that jealousy overcome him and wash over him and just completely consume him, and he's just going to give up, and the other team's got to be like, Sawamura, what are you doing? Like, I thought that's the route we were going, and I was getting really emotional because I was like, you've worked so hard to get here, and that's why he's so frustrated, because Sawamura was like, I overcame so much last season, and what was the point? He's like, I'm never going to get to pitch again, and that's why I thought it was going, and I was getting really sad. I'm like, Sawamura, you can't do that. But then what I love that this series does is it flips it at the end. He grabs the dirt from the bullpen and he's like, no. He's like, I'm never going to forget how much this hurt to be at Nationals and not be able to pitch when I want to, when I'm needed. He's like, I'm never going to forget how bad this feels. And so he takes the dirt from the bullpen being like, I'm never coming back here again. I love that. I love that he twists it to where he's like, it's not that I'm never coming back to Nationals. I'm never going to be in the bullpen again. I'm going to be on the mound as the ace. It's like, he's that resolve. And Miyuki and them realizing that that's his resolve. He's like, no, I'm going to overcome Furuya and become the ace. How? I don't know. But we get a taste of it in episode 6. We get a taste of it. But it's like, just when you think, like, we had such highs with Sawamura, like episode 47 of season 2, such highs with Furuya, and then the Terajima, the mangaka, is just like, well, now it's time for you to start over again. It's like, but it makes sense too. That's the worst part about it. It's like, it all makes sense. It's like, damn it. Fine. You've sucked me in. I want to see our boy overcome everything. I guess I'll watch. Find out. So there's that. And then, episode 5. Episode 5 is amazing. I loved episode 5. Episode 6 is great. Episode 5, all the character introductions, the character dynamics being set up. Wakana, I was told in the Discord, there was a manga excerpt that Kelsey and them shared in the Discord, where we find out in the manga that Wakana had sent Eiji all these messages, and he never responded to her, and he basically friend-zoned her, essentially. She was like, I'm gonna come watch you, and I believe in you, and he was like, you're so silly, Wakana, and she's like, basically, she was mad that he didn't get back to her. And so after the game, he does. And she has inadvertently met Kuromochi. I've been saying all this time that I kind of want to ship Wakana with Kuromochi because Kuromochi wants to get with Wakana. Now she knows who he is, even though he's a blur. Step 1, it's like the meme with the dominoes, and there's like the one little domino and the big... I'm like, the little domino is Sawamura introducing Kuromochi to Wakana through text, and then the big domino is like them getting married one day. That's where it started. I'm like, okay, I want to ship Wakana with Kuromochi because I kind of somewhat ship Haruno with Sawamura. It's like Sawamura, if I was going to ship him with a woman character in this show, it would be with Haruno. If I would. I definitely ship Sawamura with Miyuki more than anything, but if I had to ship him with a girl, it'd be Haruno. So speaking of Haruno, we have her with Sachi and Yui. Before that, though, Sawamura called Furuya incredible. He was telling Wakana, he's like, it sucks that we lost. He was incredible. And I was like, oh. Like, just the fact that Sawamura acknowledges he's not petty enough to be like, oh, well, Furuya's not that great. No, he acknowledges that Furuya is really incredible. And that's what he wants to live up to. That's their rivalry, is him wanting to get to the same level. Right? And so we cut to Sachi and Yui. There's a girl Yui, and then Yui is our new first year Kaoru catcher. And then I like that Sachi's into Hongo. She's into the more she's into like the bad boys, the more aggressive boys, which Nori gets some attitude on him in this episode. So I'm like, maybe I kind of ship Sachi with Nori a little bit. So I'm like, maybe if Sachi sees Nori's sassy side, she'll kind of go with that like she does with Hongo. And then Yui, she's kind of about Furuya. And then, of course, Haruno, she's all about Sawamura. And then Yui and Sachi saying it's their last summer. And that's really sad because, yeah, this year, it's Sawamura and Furuya's second year, but it's also Miyuki and the other's third year. It's like, oof. I'm not ready for Miyuki to leave the team. I'm not. That's going to be rough. Miyuki and Zono, that's going to be rough. I'm not ready for that at all. Nope. No, not ready. Mm-mm. So then, I like that we were setting up the spring tournament. They set up in this episode Yakushi versus Inashiro, which we're going to start next episode. Oh my god. I'm so ready. I'm so excited. Inashiro and Yakushi are probably my two favorite rival teams. Yakushi is definitely my favorite rival team, but Inashiro, I like them a lot as a rival team. They're great. So I'm very curious to see how that game's going to go. They faced each other before, so it's a rematch. Well, it's going to be interesting to see who beats, because it's very early on in the block, too. It's very early on, so it's like, okay, are we setting up Inashiro to face Sato possibly again? Or is it going to be... I think that's what's going to happen. I think Inashiro is going to win against Yakushi, but I don't know how. I don't know how this is going to go. Because I think they're setting up an OP Inashiro versus Mima's team. Because in the very end, they have Mei and Mima, who we find out is a batter. I was told in the Discord he's a batter. And so I'm like, okay, or in the comments. So I feel like that's what they're setting up. So I feel like Inashiro is going to beat Yakushi, but we don't know how. So there's going to be that. Okay. But yeah, I like Haruichi finally cutting his hair, chopping off his bangs, making his eyes come out. I was like, it took you 2 seasons, my dude. But I love that we finally get the words that Ryo told him when he graduated. He's like, you're going to walk a different path than me. You need to carve out your own way. Quit following my shadow and be your own person. Ironically, he becomes more like Ryo in these episodes in becoming his own person, which is hilarious. Like when he shows his eyes being like, no, Sawamura. And they're all like, oh my God, he's like Ryo. And Kuromochi's like, yes, he's like Ryo. It's like, I feel like Furuya, he's like, I'm going to ignore you outside of game, Sawamura. I'm like, no, Haruichi, don't ruin that friendship. I feel like I kind of ship Haruichi and Furuya, though, so that makes sense that he's like that with Sawamura. But then he does have moments where he doesn't want to admit that Sawamura is one of his close friends, kind of like Furuya. But yeah, I love that Haruichi becomes his own person. He cuts his hair. We get to see his beautiful eyes now. It's great. And then I love the scene of... I love how Sawamura, because him and Furuya are running together, and Sawamura's like, don't you have some interviews to do? Like Sawamura's being sassy with Furuya, and Furuya's talking with him back. He's like, no, I'm tired of these interviews. They just ask the same questions. I would rather be doing this. I love that, just that simple banter back and forth between the two of them, that just simple conversation. I love that. I love that they're just talking, having a conversation. It's great. I'm like, oh, that's so good. And then Nori getting sassy, being a sassy third year. That's the other thing Nori's gone after this year. I love Nori being sassy and being like, you're done. You've got to heal yourself up. Don't screw this up, Furuya. I absolutely love that. And I love the shot of Miyuki looking back at all three of them. He's like, these are my pictures. These are my boys. Nori and Furuya and Sawamura. These are my 3 guys. Our 3 main pitchers, and now I think we're going to have 3 main catchers, because no offense to Akiba and Ono. No offense, boys. I love y'all. Or, it's not Akiba, it's Hakiba, or Hariba. It's Hariba. I always forget Hariba's name every time. I think some of you commented on this. You're like, you always forget Hariba. I'm like, I do. He has the spiky hair. And Ono. I feel for Ono and Hariba, because I think that they're just getting bumped down even further, because Koshu and Yui, Kaoru... I may have to call him Kaoru just because the one manager girl's name is Yui, just to keep them separate. I don't know. But yeah, so we're about to get all the roommate things, which is just absolute insanity. We'll talk about that. But so we get the class breaks, and now that they're second years, they're all in different classes together. So Sawamura and Furuya were in different classes last year, but now they're in the same class with Kanemaru. Very interesting. I think it's very interesting because I've been talking about like the captain roles and like Furuya and Sawamura and Kanemaru being possible captain candidates. I think Kanemaru might be more of a vice captain, but I feel like Sawamura, he could become captain his senior year, now that I'm thinking about it. It would be really, really sweet if Miyuki gave the captainship to Sawamura. that would be amazing, and I would probably cry. I would probably cry if that happens, because during the Nationals game, I'd questioned whether or not Sawamura, back in season 2, I'd questioned whether Sawamura, if he'd be too hyper all the time, and because he didn't notice Miyuki's injury, if he'd have the awareness to be a captain. But during the Nationals game, Sawamura was always encouraging his team. He was always encouraging them to be their best, and I'm like, I could see him be captain after that. He'd be a very different captain than Tetsu, a very different captain than Miyuki, but still has that spirit. So it's like, okay, I could see it now. And I will cry. If Miyuki hands off the captainship to Sawamura, I will sob. So I'm not ready for that. Don't spoil me if it's happened in the manga yet, but I will sob. So, yeah. But yes, so Kanemaru is now in the same class with Furuya and Haruno and Sawamura. And on the one hand, it worries me a little bit that Furuya and Sawamura are in the same class, because Sawamura has that like jealousy, and it's like, is it just going to fuel him and Furuya's? It can do one of two things. It could make Sawamura get slightly dejected if Furuya gets all this praise and Sawamura's like, I'm trying my best. It could spur him forward to be to spur that rivalry forward. But I feel like with Kanemaru and Haruno there with them, that they're not going to let that first scenario happen, and instead, what I hope happens is that them being in the same class together, yeah, it's going to spur their rivalry forward, but it's also going to let Furuya and Sawamura talk to each other more. They're in the same class together, so they're going to get to talk to each other one-on-one more and develop that communication as pitchers more, and as teammates. So that's really cool. I like that. I think that could lend to some very interesting scenarios. Also, I know I said that if I was going to ship Sawamura with a girl, it would be Haruno, but I'm going to be honest. I had been shipping Toji and Kanemaru, but I'm changing my game a little bit. I feel like Kanemaru and Toji, besties. But I kind of ship Kanemaru with Haruno now. It's so sad because Haruno, she has all of her eyes on Sawamura. She's like, well, they'll be okay because Sawamura is here. It'll be all right. And it's like Haruno has her eyes on Sawamura, but Kanemaru was like all blush around her. And I was like, oh, Kanemaru, do you like Haruno? Ah, interesting. It's like, okay. And then we get the first years all showing up. Holy crap. I was so wrong about so many things. And I could still be wrong about so many things, but I'm changing my tunes. So we get introduced to some of the first years, right? So Yui is a prodigy. Yui Kaoru is a prodigy. He was the team captain of the Japan national team in elementary and middle school. Okay, that's where the trophies are coming in. And he is rooming with Ono and Furuya. So that's an interesting dynamic. I hadn't even thought. I thought they'd pair up Koshu with Furuya because they seem to be kind of frigid personalities. But here's the thing. Furuya needs to communicate with people. And I feel like Yui is a great roommate for Furuya to have because Yui is so... Here, I was talking about this in the Discord. Yui and Akamatsu, they both look like cinnamon rolls, but they're both liars. They're both liars. I think they're both demons. No, I think that Yui comes across as being this cinnamon roll who's like, I am so happy to be here. I'm going to whip you all into shape. And it's like, ugh. And I feel like Akamatsu's the same way. It's interesting because Akamatsu kind of sucks up to Mei as soon as he meets him. And Yui kind of sucks up to Furuya as soon as he meets him. It's so interesting. Like, Akamatsu's like, I'm going to work with Mei, and we're going to become this amazing bad... Well, but Akamatsu's a pitcher. He's not a catcher. I feel like, character-wise, Akamatsu, Shinji, and Yui both kind of suck up to their respective pitchers right from the go. The difference is that Yui is a catcher. So Yui and Furuya could develop this really cool battery together. And I could see it because Yui seems very genuinely nice and understanding and communicative. And like he's going to listen to Furuya and be able to talk to him. And I wondered if Yui would be able to catch Furuya's pitches. If he's the team captain of the Japan national team. I'm sure he can. So I'm like, oh, okay. No, we're fine. We're great. So I feel like that's going to be a really interesting battery that could develop between them. And here's the thing. This is Miyuki's last year. As much as I hate to admit it, it's Miyuki's last year. Somebody's going to have to step up next year to take his place. And Hariba, I love you, honey, but I think it's going to be Koshu and Yui. And I feel like Yui could be a very cool battery with Furuya and develop that way, right? And so it's very interesting. So I think you have that dynamic with the battery between Furuya and Yui. Whereas Akamatsu, he seems like the demon with like the angel grin, right? But he's a pitcher. He's not a catcher. So I feel like he's going to be rivalry for Mei in the future. Not during this game against Yakushi because he's in the stands because he's the first year, right? But he's going to be a rivalry with Mei. Whereas I feel like Yui is going to be someone that can be a comrade to Furuya, a teammate. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see. I feel like Akamatsu and Kaoru are very similar characters, but their roles within their teams is going to be vastly different. And the way that their dynamics work with other teammates is going to be vastly different. So that has me really, really excited. But then, so we have that. We have Asada. Sweet, weak Asada. They're like, he just looks like a weakling. He's all hunched over. I feel like Asada is going to be one of those characters that grows so much in this series. Asada is like Sawamura. He starts off and people are like, oh, who's this guy? And I feel like, and he seems like he admires Sawamura and looks up to him so much because he sees what he could be through Sawamura. He's like, Sawamura doesn't look like somebody who's going to come on the mound and do anything, but then he does. And he's a pitcher. So I feel like Asada is going to go the same route as Sawamura over the course of the series, and Sawamura will be able to be a senpai to him. Bless his heart, though. He is rooming with Sawamura and Kuromochi. Bless his heart. And they just punk him like the first night. I love that Sawamura's like, I've been waiting to do this ever since I was a first year. I want to be the senpai now that gets... And of course, since Kuromochi is like... It's like straight up Taurus vibes. Y'all were talking about me being a Tauros. Kuromochi and Sawamura are both Tauruses. I'm all about that shit. Like, as soon as they did the thing, I was like, nope, that'd be me. I'd be right there with them. Put on the fake blood and the axe. I'd be all for it. So that's why it was so funny to me. I'm like, no, I get it. I get why they're like that. And I feel for Asada. Bless his heart. That boy is going to suffer. But I feel like by the end of this, him and Sawamura are going to become good friends because he seems like a genuinely nice person. And I feel like him and Sawamura are going to bond a lot. And I'm looking forward to seeing Sawamura give him a lot of advice and be a senpai to him. Like, that's going to be so cool. I'm so excited. So then we meet Megami. And Megami has like the solid black eyes, and he's like a weasel. He's kind of sneaky, and he is rooming with Zono and Haruichi, and he wants to be the shortstop. So okay, but I feel like he's an interesting character already. I'm like, he thinks that he's just gonna suck up to Haruichi and Zono and like become the team leader. And it's like, oh honey, you got a lot to learn. You got a lot to learn, right? And then we have Masashi, and Masashi talks big. He's like, I'm ready to go pro right now. I'm like, oh, they're like, oh, I feel like Masashi's going to have a lot to learn too. He thinks he knows everything. He's like, my big brother, I've watched him. I know how this is going to go down. It's like, oh. And I like that Tetsu seems to have had a hands-off approach with his younger brother. He's like, you'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's going to be a lot of fun. And then Sato is a second baseman. It's like, okay. He's rooming with Kanemaru. I'm like, cool. I feel like Sato, I like his red streak in his hair. It's kind of different. I feel like he's going to have a interesting dynamic. He seems like a Kanemaru type of character, except Kanemaru is kind of pessimistic naturally, and Sato seems kind of like just surprised and in awe of everything. It's like, interesting. And then we have Koshu. Oh my god. So Koshu rooming with Miyuki and Kimura, the other second year is fascinating because Koshu does not seem to like Miyuki at all. Koshu wants Miyuki's role. I thought going into this that Yui would be like, oh, you've won some trophies. You've probably done good in middle school, but I thought Yui was going to be like at the bottom of the ladder compared to Koshu and Miyuki. No, I think that Yui is talented and he's the prodigy. He's going to give... It's funny because Miyuki has been established. It's kind of like Miyuki is a combination of Koshu and Yui, that Miyuki has this kind of like prodigy-like nature to him where he is instantly talented at catching. He's a natural-born catcher, Miyuki is. And he's kind of like Kaoru in that he has this kind of prodigy air about him. But Miyuki's also a troll, and Miyuki also has this attitude that's more similar to Koshu's. And so Miyuki has had to work hard, even though he's like has a prodigy, like a natural catching ability, he has had to work hard to establish his reputation and build himself up to be captain. I thought that Koshi was the prodigy, but I think that Koshu has this attitude where I didn't think he'd get along with Sawamura, but I think I could be totally wrong. I think Koshu, especially after episode 6, Koshu is going to want to work with Sawamura. Because I feel like Koshu is in a similar mindset to Miyuki. Like, Miyuki, what do you see in Sawamura? Why do you get so excited to catch for him? What is it? How can you mold Sawamura? What is this about? And I think he's noticing that Sawamura is receptive to what Miyuki puts on the table, and that they have this great battery, Sawamura and Miyuki do, because they're on the same wavelength. They understand each other and their goals in their respective roles, and they see how they work together and how them being on the same wavelength can yield really great results. And I think that Koshu notices that and is like, okay, Sawamura is somebody that I can work with. I can use my calls, and Sawamura is going to be receptive of them. But Sawamura is not the type of pitcher that caves easily, because we've seen him be like, no, I don't want to do that. But I think Koshu is seeing the potential that he has with Sawamura, and so I'm actually excited. I think that Yui's going to be the battery with Furuya, and Koshu's going to be the battery with Sawamura, and Miyuki's going to be in between like, wait, what? Because, yeah, you have these two catchers that they don't really want to play any other position, and Miyuki's like, I'm the captain and the main catcher. Because Ono and Hariba have not really given Miyuki a run for his money. Miyuki's like, no, I'm going to be catcher, and you guys are just going to have to sit the bench, and sorry about that. But I feel like Koshu and Yui are going to give Miyuki a run for his money. And Miyuki's going to know what it feels like to be like Chris Senpai, when Chris was like, because Miyuki right now doesn't have the injury flaring up, so that's going to be interesting. That's just going to be an interesting dynamic. And I love when Sawamura is like holding Miyuki up, and he's like, what are you doing? And Kurmoshi's like kicking him from behind, and Miyuki's like, I'm the captain, what? And Miyuki's like, this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so excited to see what conversations Koshu and Miyuki have, especially as roommates. If Koshu's like, I'm going to catch for Sawamura, and Miyuki's like, That's going to be interesting. That is going to be interesting. And then we have this mysterious final recruit. What? We get to see the back of his hair. He's like a redhead, like a strawberry blonde. We see the back of his hair. This mysterious final recruit that fractured his leg and isn't allowed to come in yet. I'm like, wait, what? What? There's just too many new recruits. What is happening? I'm very curious to know who this final recruit is. Very curious. Like, what else are we going to shake up the dynamics with? How does this work? So we have 59 second and third years, which is about 25 apiece, which is about 25 to 30, about 30 apiece. And then we have 35 new first years. So it makes sense. I talked about that in the reaction. You have your turnover where you have a third of the team leaves each year. So you need to replace it with another third. But that's still 94 members, and only 20 are going to get to play the game. And we've just established like 6 first years that are very, very talented. So are people going to be swapped out? How is this working? I don't feel like our pitcher relay is in trouble, because I don't think that Asada's not as good as the others, so I'm not worried about them. But with our catchers and Masashi, that could be very interesting. So I don't know. I'm like, Ono and Hariba, I feel, are in trouble. I feel like these first years are going to bump up the bench. So, it's interesting. But then we have episode 6. And so we've officially started second year. Officially. It's kind of weird. And it's really, really weird. And we're starting the spring tournament. It's March into April. And so we're starting the spring tournament. It's right back where we were in season 1. It's the most bizarre thing. And so we have Sato versus Eijun. And they win 11-1. They stomp them. And I like that Ochiai, he comments about Haruichi being stubborn. He's like, I tried, because Kuromochi took Ochiai's advice, and like Chitamochi does, he ran with it, and it yielded good results. But Haruichi's stubborn. He's like, nah, I'm going to do things my way and keep the wooden bat. And Ochiai's like, he cut his hair like it was his resolve. Like that was him putting his foot down saying, I'm doing this my way. And Haruichi's like, and I like that Ochiai's like, fine. See if it works for you. I like that. I like that Ochiai's like, okay, fine, be that way. And then I did get a little sad when Haruichi ignored Sawamura. He's picked up some of Furuya's habits, but it's like, Sawamura was just being silly there. And they talk about Miyuki possibly getting drafted. So already they're talking about the third years getting drafted. It's like, I think it would be very interesting. I have my whole theory about Mei and Miyuki being exes. It would be very intriguing if after this year, Miyuki and Mei both end up getting drafted to the same team as Harada. That would be amazing. I would love that because one, it would give Mei what he's always wanted. He always wanted to work with Miyuki. It would be amazing. It would give them the chance to be a battery, which is exciting. Like the exes getting back together. And then it would not only be amazing because Mei would finally get to be a battery with Miyuki, but also Harada doesn't like Miyuki. And Harada likes Mei. And Mei likes Harada. So it would be the weirdest triangle of characters. You'd have Harada, who does not really care for Miyuki. Miyuki does not really care for Mei, but he kind of does. And then Mei cares for both Miyuki and Harada. So it'd be like this crazy triangle and then working on the same team professionally. I think that would be interesting. So my headcanon is I kind of want Miyuki and Mei to get drafted to the same team as Harada. Because Mei wanted to play with Harada. And then if Miyuki just happened to get drafted to it, the drama, the suspense, it would be great. So yeah, Furuya's getting a fan squad, and that fan squad, I want to slap all them winches across the face. I was like, we'll get to that. But Miyuki's getting the fangirl squad. It reminded me a lot of Slam Dunk. Sakuragi and Sawamura are very similar in this episode. And then you have Sakuragi and his rival. God, his name starts with an R, and my mind went blank this whole day. And I was like, wait, it's not... And Rukawa, thank you. I was like, Rukawa. I was like, why is my mind going blank? I love Slam Dunk. What's happening? But Sakuragi and Rukawa. Furuya was reminding me a lot of Rukawa in this episode, where he had the fangirl squad that he's oblivious to. Furuya knows nothing about these fangirls. He's like, what? No. And Rukawa in Slam Dunk just wants to play basketball. And Furuya in baseball just wants to play baseball. And Sakuragi wants to play too, but Sakuragi and Sawamura are surprisingly similar going into this Act 2, which I like, because I like Sakuragi. And Sakuragi gets a chance to prove himself, just like Sawamura does, right? But Rukawa and Furuya, they're very similar characters, especially at this point. But Nori starts the game. We talked about this in the last season, several of us in the comments and in the Discord, about Nori being a starter instead of a relief pitcher. And that maybe that's where he belongs. Maybe Nori is best as a starter because he doesn't have the pressure of the game built upon him. We found out in the last 2 seasons that Nori does not do very well under pressure. Nori psychs himself out rather easily. So I like the idea that Nori starts out this game and he doesn't have all that pressure, so he's able to pitch the best that he can without worrying about letting the team down. I'm like, awesome, cool. And so I like that Miyuki even kind of acknowledges that as well. But I like that we figured this out about Nori. It took us 2 years. He's a 3rd year now, but we figured out where he's best at. And then Sawamura coming in for Nori. It makes sense because they're trying to give Furuya some time off in case if they want to use him later on in the tournament in some of the bigger games. Let him recover in the outfield. Makes sense. But I was so pissed at the stands. Everyone was so rude. They were like, who's this guy? Sawamura. I'm like, he's been doing great the entire series. And y'all, it takes one national round for y'all to forget who he is. What? And then you have, of course, all these fangirls that just now showed up because Furuya's done really well at nationals. And so they're like, who's Sawamura? Oh my God, I don't like. I was like, ooh. And I felt like Yui and Haruno sitting there in the stands being like, and they're polite enough to not speak up. But if I had been in the stands, I'd been like, you get out there and watch. Just you wait. Oh, it's so frustrating. But yeah, they're just, nobody knows anything about Sawamura. And I like, though, that the reporters make the distinction that they're like, the summer tournament is not going to be like the spring tournament. Because that's the thing. Furuya still has that stamina issue, and we've been playing through the fall, and Furuya's done really well in the fall, but Furuya's biggest Achilles heel, aside from getting injured, aside from his literal heel, his biggest Achilles heel is that he loses stamina, especially in heat. And so, of course, the fall and spring tournaments were perfect for Furuya, because the climate was acclimated to him perfectly. But the summer's going to be different. And I like that the reporters say that Nori and Sawamura's growth is going to be extremely important if they're going to hope to win nationals. Like, they're going to have to rely on a relay. And so that's good. That's good that he established this now, because it's like, okay, so we're going to build up Nori and Sawamura this season, hopefully, to kind of match up with Furuya. And so then Sawamura pitching 135 kilometers per hour. Not still under like 20 kilometers under Furuya, but it's faster than it has been in the past. And I like that the non-fangirls, that the actual people who've been following Sawamura's progress the last year, they notice that. And they're like, oh, Sawamura's pitching faster. And he's only doing fastballs. And Miyuki's like, I just want you to do fastballs. I just want you to... It's what Chris wanted him to do from the start. Perfect what you're best at. Perfect that best pitch. And then you can incorporate the others after that. So that's what Miyuki's doing. He's like, this game, you need to prove you can do a good fastball. Let's do that. All right? And I like that we see Koshu and Yui watching Sawamura and taking notes, right? I still feel like Yui is going to want to catch for Furuya more because they're roommates and they're bonding. And like the very first night that they were in the roommates, Furuya's like, you're a catcher, you want to go catch? And Yui's like, yeah, I do. So I'm like, from that moment on, I was like, okay, those two are going to be friends. They're going to be a battery. But I feel like Koshu watching and just seeing not malleable, not Sawamura being malleable, but Sawamura being adaptable to what the catcher asks and communicating with the catcher. And Koshu, I think, sees Sawamura not as somebody that's going to instantly do whatever the catcher wants, but that is thinking along the same wavelengths as the catcher. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Sawamura, despite being our sunshine boy and despite being this ray of sunshine who's always optimistic, he does think about pitching. He is a thinker. And so he thinks with Miyuki, like, okay, this is what we're going to do, right? And Miyuki's like, this is what we need to do, right? And they both get on the same wavelength. And I think that Koshu's realizing, like, oh, I took Sawamura to just be this oblivious simpleton who would do whatever Miyuki told him. But that's not the case. Sawamura is knowing what Miyuki wants, and he's accepting it. And so I think the wheels are turning in Koshu's head to be like, oh, we could be a good battery. So I was totally wrong, and I could be proven wrong again, but I think I'm totally changing my tune from the last set of episodes. It's getting interesting. Very interesting. And Miyuki saying, I want your individuality. I want the pitch that only you can give me. That's what I like the best about you. And it's like, Like Miyuki sees Furuya as this kind of well of potential. Like, we haven't seen how far Furuya can go yet. And Miyuki gets excited about that. And then you see Sawamura and he's like, you're so different than every other pitcher I've ever worked with. There's so much potential there. So it's like you have Furuya who has this untapped potential of power and Sawamura who has this untapped potential of his individuality. And so I love those dynamics. And Miyuki's just like, I just want to work with both of you so much. And so I think that's where it's going to get interesting, where Koshu and Kaoru are involved, because they're going to come at this wanting something similar as Miyuki. And then Sawamura saying, I want to go beyond with him. It's like, it's love, damn it. Sawamura's like, I want to go to nationals and be the best that I can with Miyuki. And it's like, it's like the fangirl in me is like, I ship it so hard, y'all. I ship it so hard. So then we have other teams playing at the end of this game. Shunshin being a ball boy. What? That is the most unfair thing in the world, that Shunshin has been demoted to ball boy. He can't play in his third year. That's stupid. I hate it so much. It's so sad. And the saddest part about it is that Shunshin is so encouraging. It felt like Sawamura from episode 4. Shunshin's like, I can't be on the mound and I can't pitch, but I'm going to keep supporting my team. I want Shunshin and Sawamura to have a conversation now about their respective roles as pitchers and about how that feels. Like, I want them to have a heart-to-heart, because Shunshin's always wanted to pitch for Miyuki, and Sawamura wants to pitch for Miyuki too. I feel like they have a lot in common. I just need that conversation to happen. But I feel so bad for Shunshin. It's awful. And then we cut to Ichidai, who wins, and they advance on. And then Kosei's kind of like Furuya a little bit, where he's like, what? I just want to keep pitching. But Kosei's so weird. I love him. Where he's like, guys, you need to do worse so that we can pitch more innings. It's like, yes, please. I love it. And so then we cut back to Sato. Sato won the game, 11-1. And they make note, the people outside, I like this contrast. The people outside of the stadium are noting how Sawamura is improving. They're like, man, that was a really good strike out there at the end. Sawamura is getting better and better. And then you cut to inside where Sawamura is getting his shoulder ice to Miyuki. He's like, you need to do better. You didn't do this. You messed up. It felt like a Yuri on Ice moment. It felt like Yuri on Ice where Yuri does the amazing number, and at the very end, Victor's like, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right, you gotta improve. And then it felt like the same thing where Sawamura had a great game, and Miyuki's like, you still have to improve, you still have to get better. And it just felt like that same dynamic. Like the Victor-Yuri dynamic felt like Miyuki-Sawamura. Again, why I ship them. It just felt like the same thing. And in that moment, Asada, I felt it was interesting that Yui notes, he's like, okay, well, this is how Sawamura is. Okay, like he's calculating. Yui's a very calculating catcher. And then Asada is like, he sees Sawamura as a core pitcher of the team. As the core pitcher. He's like, I didn't know Sawamura was capable of that. But that's why everybody relies on him. And it's like Asada develops this respect for Sawamura instantly, and I feel like Asada sees his potential in Sawamura, and I just love that. I want to see how much Asada grows in this series. I want to see Yui and Koshu and how they interact with Miyuki in these coming games. I'm like, I just want to eat it up, right? And then we have no time for that because it's Inashiro versus Yakushi, and we get all of the new first years for Inashiro and Yakushi. There's too many. It's like too many. I'm like, oh my God. I love, though, that it's the funniest thing. The first years for Yakushi, I feel like the recruitment for both teams is very consistent because you have, for Yakushi's side, you have these new first years, and they all look like wild cards. You have this one guy on the bench reading like hentai, and he's like, what's going on? I feel like Todoroki was like, put him on the team. And then you have the one guy with the blonde spiky hair, and he's like, where's all the cheerleaders? Like the womanizer. And Todoroki's like, put him on the team. It's like all the wild card crazy trolls. Todoroki's like, come join us. We're a family here. It's me, my son Raichi, and my son-in-law Sanada. Just come on, right? And then you have Inashiro. And all of the first years for Inashiro have this kind of air of elitism to them, like this little air of arrogance to them, where they're like, oh, look at this. And I'm like, no, I feel like Konitomo's like, we can use this. Come aboard. We have enough divas. Join our diva squad. Welcome to the team. But Akamatsu, he's in the stands towering over everyone because he's a freaking giant. And he's just like, we'll just see how it goes. And there's just something about his eyes. Here's the thing. Yui comes across as a complete cinnamon bun. And I think that he is, but he's very smart and very talented. I feel like Yui is in fact a cinnamon roll. And he's just very smart and talented and calculating. And that he's going to use that to the best of his ability and genuinely help the team. Akamatsu looks like a cinnamon roll. He's a liar. He's a devil. I feel like he's a devil in disguise where he's like, come on, guys, it's great. Everything is wonderful. And then he's going to go onto the mound and be an absolute demon. And I feel like Mei's going to see that firsthand and be like, I feel like this game is going to be Mei setting up his territory against Shinji, against Akamatsu, and being like, I'm the main pitcher, don't forget it. I feel like it's that, because it almost seemed like Akamatsu's like, well, I guess we'll see if we win or not. I guess Mei will prove his worth in this game. Ha ha ha. I'm like, ooh! So, yeah, because that last shot of Mei, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, because it's like, Mei combines so many things with Furuya and Sawamura. He has the same blue intensity that Furuya has, but at the end of the day, Furuya just wants to do the best as he can to help the team and himself, right? There's no arrogance to Furuya. He just wants to keep playing baseball and help his team. Sawamura, it's not arrogance, but Sawamura feels like he has something to prove. He wants to prove his usefulness to his team, right? And Mei's kind of a combination of that. Mei wants to prove that he's the best pitcher in Japan. And he also wants to keep pitching. And so I feel like this is not only him proving that he's like, I'm just as good as Furuya and Hongo, and don't forget it, but it's like he's also making a statement to Akamatsu being like, you're not just going to come in here and take my spot, just so you know. So, I don't know. I'm just like, I love this season already. This series just gets better and better. I did the math. You all were doing the math on the Discord, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that we only have for Act 2, we only have 17 weeks of episodes. What? And now we only have 15 weeks left. What? No, I'm not ready! I don't want this to end! I don't want Ace of the Diamond to end yet! And I'm already saying that, and it's only the start of the season, so I'm gonna be a mess. This season's gonna make me a mess. But yeah, so I am so curious to know your thoughts down below. What do we do? What can we do? So I'm so curious to know your thoughts down below, but I'm so excited to see where this is all going to go. It's going to be amazing. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, next week we'll do episodes 7, 8, 9. And I guess we're going to see Yakushi versus Inashiro. Why not? So, I'll talk to y'all next week with more of Ace of the Diamond Act 2.